Have you ever wondered why you just can't seem to kick a bad habit? Whether it's scrolling endlessly on your phone at 2 in the morning, stress eating, or even relying on substances? Society constantly tells us that addiction is simply a lack of discipline. But what if that's completely wrong? Well, today in this explainer, we're embarking on a psychological hero's journey inward. We're going to look at the true nature of addiction through the lens of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, and we're going to discover that the urges we fight so desperately might actually be the exact messengers we need to heal.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want to ask you directly, why do you think white-knuckling your way through bad habits literally never works long-term? You know the drill, right? You make a promise to yourself, never again, tomorrow I'm going to do better. And hey, you might even last a few days or weeks, but eventually the old pattern crashes right back in, bringing a whole lot of shame with it. The truth is, if sheer force and strict discipline were actually the answers, none of us would be stuck in these loops.
So, to figure out why we fail, here is our map for today as we descend into the basement of the unconscious. We'll start with the myth of willpower, then we'll meet your shadow, explore the archetypes, lay out actionable steps to shadow work, tap into the power of naming, and finally discover the path to wholeness. Don't worry, we're definitely going to arrive at some highly practical steps.
Section 1. The myth of willpower and the failure of force.
Now, what's really interesting about this cultural myth we're fed, this idea that we should just fight cravings with force and say no, is that willpower is basically a muscle. And just like any muscle, it gets tired. It's literally like trying to shove a giant beach ball underwater. Sure, you can do it if you hold it down with all your strength, but the harder you press, the more it pushes back. And eventually, when your arms get exhausted because life knocks you down, that ball bursts to the surface with even more force. This is your craving. Suppression never works forever because the craving isn't something external, it's actually a part of you.
Think about being caught in a riptide at the beach. Your immediate, frantic instinct is to fight it, to swim directly against the current. But if you do that, you just exhaust yourself, panic, and drown. The real secret to surviving a riptide is totally counterintuitive. You float. You just let the current carry you, you observe it, and once it weakens, you swim sideways to safety. If you fight cravings directly, you drown in exhaustion. But if you float with them and observe them with a bit of curiosity, that actually weakens their power over you. Moving on to Section 2, meeting your shadow down in the dark basement.
So the crucial point here is to imagine your life as a house. The conscious rooms upstairs, they're neat, tidy, and beautifully decorated. But down in the dark, locked basement lives your shadow. It is everything you've ever rejected about yourself. The anger you pretend you don't have, the sadness you bury by staying busy, all that shame and guilt. And the thing is, the more you try to hide the shadow by sweeping it under the rug, the larger that pile gets until it completely trips you up. In fact, addiction is absolutely one of the shadow's favorite masks to wear.
And this brilliantly illustrates a really important question. Are you acting on autopilot, or are you truly conscious? You know those security tests online that ask you to prove you're human? Well, the shadow thrives when we fail that test in real life. It loves mindless, robotic loops, late-night scrolling, drinking, stress eating. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm just relaxing, but we are totally on autopilot. Addiction is basically the mute button we smash when the shadow rises up and demands to be heard.
People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Carl Jung said that, and I just want to let that profound thought breathe for a second. Addiction really isn't about the substance or the habit itself. It's a mask for pain. So ask yourself right now, what pain are you trying to numb when the silence gets a little too loud?
The desire to integrate these hidden parts of ourselves is actually so strong that some people look for extreme shortcuts. For instance, if you look at discussions in Jungian online communities, you'll see individuals reporting that they use psychedelics to balance their psychological one-sidedness, like feeling too overly logical and disconnected from their emotional side. But it's really important to note here that Jung himself strongly warned against this. He cautioned that the unconscious heavily dislikes the use of drugs, warning that they bring an artificial inflation to the ego rather than a genuine earned integration.
Section 3. Exploring the archetypes and mapping the psyche.
Let's move to the archetypes and see how this builds a map of the psyche. We have these core energies, the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. And our ego is constantly bouncing back and forth between grandiosity, which is the inflated, active shadow, and insecurity, which is the deflated, passive shadow. Take the lover archetype, for example. A healthy lover brings joy and connection. But in the shadow, it becomes the addicted lover, restlessly chasing endless pleasures with zero self-regulation. Recognizing these ancient patterns operating within us is the very first step to pulling them out of the dark.
Section 4. Steps to shadow work and the tools of transformation.
So now that we have the theory down, how do we actually do this? Dr. Josephine Hardman provides an incredibly actionable 4-step guide. Step 1. Identify the shadow by noticing your triggers. When exactly do you get agitated? Step 2. Intuitive drawing, just to externalize those feelings on paper. Step 3. Actually dialogue with your shadow. Ask it what it needs. And step 4. Uncover its agenda. Usually, its agenda is just trying to keep you safe by repeating familiar, albeit destructive habits. Doing this requires open curiosity, a strong connection to your light, and honestly, a healthy dose of humor to soften the self-judgment.
Section 5. The power of naming and bringing it into the light. If there is one absolutely crucial, practical tool you take away from this explainer today, it's the sheer alchemical power of simply naming a craving out loud. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The unconscious only holds power over us when it's kept a terrifying mystery. If you just shift your language from, I am craving, to, I am noticing a craving, you instantly go from being swallowed whole by the desire to being the observer of it. Suddenly, fate becomes a choice. You can name it to tame it.
You can take this even further through a practice called active imagination. Instead of fighting the craving, you actually close your eyes and invite it to appear as an image or a figure. Treat the urge as a messenger, not a monster. Ask that inner figure, what do you really need right now? You might be shocked to find out that your craving for sugar is actually a deep cry for comfort, or an urge to gamble is a distorted need for vitality. See, addiction is like a blocked river. The water just builds pressure until it violently bursts. But if you redirect that blocked energy into a creative, nourishing stream, it becomes an incredible source of power.
And finally, Section 6, the path to wholeness and the return.
We've reached the final step of Jung's vision. We are returning from the basement of the unconscious, and we are bringing a new prize back upstairs with us, individuation. True freedom from addiction is not about hacking away the parts of yourself you don't like. It's definitely not about becoming some perfect saint who is completely untouched by cravings. It is all about integration. It's about welcoming those parts home and weaving the shadow back into a healthy, balanced relationship with your conscious self.
To make this a reality in your daily life, you need to make these 3 commitments. First, awareness without judgment. When a craving hits, no panicking, no shaming. Just say, okay, here's that part of me again. Second, expression with compassion. Journal about it. Speak honestly. Give that shadow a healthy voice. And third, transformation through redirection. Take that trapped energy of the craving and channel it into authentic connection, art, or healthy risks.
The very thing that once enslaved you can absolutely become a source of profound wisdom. The shadow that used to torment you, it can become your greatest teacher. But the choice is completely up to you. Will you keep fighting the riptide and running from the shadow, or will you stop fighting yourself, listen to the messengers within, and let them finally lead you to wholeness?